With Allianz, insurance and asset management, the power on your side.
Hello, good afternoon and welcome to Spa-Francorchamps for the penultimate race in the 2001 FIA Formula 3000 International Championship. I'm Martin Haven, alongside me once more Gareth Rees, as we come to the Belgian venue where we could well see the championship title decided. Cars are on the grid, ready to start their warm-up lap. Anybody who's watched the Formula 1 qualifying will know that it was wet at the start, but it has been dry since the beginning of the 1 o'clock session, and there is not just a dry line but a rapidly drying track confronting the drivers. And Gareth, that's going to offer all sorts of questions and choices on the grid at a time when drivers want to be focusing mainly on their start.
Yeah, exactly right. It's always a very difficult situation, particularly at Spa, where the weather's notorious, so it can change like that within a couple of minutes. What was a nice dry track can suddenly become an absolute torrential downpour track. And obviously the setup of the car is very difficult, because a wet setup is very different, shall I say, to a dry setup. And knowing which way to go, you've got to sort of look at the clouds and stick your finger in the air and guess which way to go, really, and hope that you guess right. If you guess wrong, it can cost you a good result.
The problem with the weather is always that high in the Ardennes mountains and surrounded by forests, it's very hard to see any distance around the track at Spa to see what is coming over the hills, unlike at Silverstone, where you can practically see it coming in from the North Atlantic. But the weather today has been a mixture of showers and bright sunny intervals, so the teams know that whatever they have now, it's unlikely to still be the same by the end of the race. There you can see David Saelens, one of the two Belgian drivers. There's Bas Leinders, the other one in the race. The camera crews undoubtedly will be taking plenty of chances to show them to the local TV audiences. Neither of them, it has to be said, have qualified particularly well. Mark Goossens, in fact, the third Belgian, is the best of them in the Cologne car, and he's qualified in 8th on the grid. Practice was dominated basically by the last man across the line after the checkered flag, very much in the manner of Formula 1. And Riccardo Sbarafico and Antônio Pizzonia in the Petrobras Junior cars were the first two on the grid. Justin Wilson, the points leader, qualified in 3rd. And this is how it ended up, with the Petrobras junior teams and on the junior drivers on the front row of the grid. Justin Wilson and a scintillating performance from Riccardo Maurizio to put him in 4th spot. Mark Webber, Wilson's realistic only title rival, in 5th place, ahead of Patrick Friesacher, Darren Manning and Mark Goossens. Then Thomas Enge, who's now dropped out of the title hunt, ahead of Bas Leinders. Sébastien Bourdais 11th from Fabrizio Golin, and then Norberto Fontana, the Argentine, ahead of Mario Haberfeld, Derek Hill and Andrea Piccini. Saelens down in 17th spot ahead of Enrico Toccocello with teammate Giorgio Pantano 19th. Zolt Baumgartner in 20th spot, and behind him Gabriele Lancieri, Jolke Mathias, Antonio Garcia and perennial tail-ender Victor Maslov in the Arden Team Russia entry. Now, the problem here for Mark Webber is that not only is he starting 5th, but he knows that he must win the last 2 races of the championship without Justin Wilson scoring a point for him to overhaul the current championship leader. And that means that Wilson, 3rd on the grid ahead of Webber, Gareth, has got a little bit of a cushion. He's got the knowledge that he has got an almost mathematically insurmountable lead. He can afford not to take risks.
He can. I mean, the situation Webber's in is almost a good situation for him, in that no one expects he can do it now. Really, Webber can just relax, drive his own race, and the pressure's probably on Justin more. He's so close, he can almost touch it, but it still is out of reach at the moment. So I'd imagine at the moment, Justin feels more pressure. Mark really's got no pressure on him. Just go out and do a race. If you win, fantastic, but nobody expects that, really.
So it's win or bust for Webber, and well, he's just right behind Justin. They will line up nose to tail on row 2 and 3 of the grid respectively, and our poleman Riccardo Sbarafico with his teammate Antonio Pizzonia alongside him. 2 Brazilian drivers in the Brazilian National Petrol Company sponsored team. And we've had Petrobras junior team drivers dominate the front row of the grid. I remember last year particularly, where they had a great race into the stadium complex at Hockenheim, succeeded in only one of them making it out in one piece. I'm sure that they will be, Paul Jackson, particularly the team boss, will be desperately hoping that that doesn't happen. As for the Nordic Racing guys, well, Thomas Enge and Justin Wilson haven't quite seemed to keep their early and mid-season run of form alive as the season reaches its tail end. Enge down there, although it was a little bit of a wet-to-dry lottery in qualifying in 9th place, a long way shy of where he would like to have been, but still guaranteed a finish, I think, in the top 3 in the championship. So still plenty left for him to race for. He's only 3 places away from the points, and at Spa I don't think that's an awful lot to imagine that you might be able to make up, not just in terms of racing, but also, of course, in terms of how many cars may well drop out. Well, no sign yet that they're going to declare this a wet race, and Gareth, I don't think, judging by conditions that we can see here at the start line, there's any need to. As we're looking at the track here, closest to the camera would be the normal racing line, but the other side looks pretty dry as well, at least on the downhill grid. Not sure what the Formula One starting lineup area will look like, but we'll get a look as they go around this track. Conditions like these, we spoke to the teams earlier and they were saying that if it started needing wet tyres, they would go for wet settings. Most of them, I should think, will have gone for a full dry setup.
I would have thought so, yeah. I think, as we discussed before the race, the problem is here, if you go for a wet setup and it doesn't go wet, or if it is wet and then dries up, because Spa has so many fast corners, and if your car is set up very soft for the wet conditions, it means the car becomes unpleasant in those fast corners. You've got Eau Rouge, you've got a quick double left-hander down the hill after the first section of corners. If the car doesn't handle nicely in those, you'll be doing slow lap time, so you need to make sure that you have a good dry setup, really, if you can.
Is there a key area at Spa that you particularly look to set a car up for? Some circuits have one particular corner above all that you must get right. Spa seems to have enough variety to make that less a requirement.
Yeah, it's such a long track, really, compared to most other circuits, that there isn't a particular corner. Having said that, it is important to be very fast, or as fast as you can, through Eau Rouge, because after Eau Rouge, there's such a long straight that if you're slow through Eau Rouge, then that will stay with you all the way up that long straight. I think it's like half a mile long or something stupid. So really, you've got to make sure that you're nice and quick through Eau Rouge to make sure you're quick up that straight, because otherwise you can lose time there. But it is such a long circuit that you can perhaps pull a bit back elsewhere, but you do have to be quick through Eau Rouge, really, which is easier said than done, because it is a big, brave corner.
It is a big, brave corner, and still famous the world over as one of the scariest in racing, and I guess at some stage in your career you have to get to that point where you're going to take it flat for the first time. Now, just how much of a worry is that as a driver, because everybody knows its reputation?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it is a very daunting corner, because as you come out of La Source hairpin and start to go down the hill towards Eau Rouge, you can see it coming. So it's not like it's a corner that suddenly appears on you around the blind bend and you haven't got time to think about it. You've got all this time to see it coming and think about it. And also the runoff, really isn't an awful lot of runoff there. So you know if you get it wrong, you make a mistake, then you're going to get punished. But you know you have to be quick. It's such a very important corner, you have to be quick through it, so you just get on with it.
I read a great quote the other day. Somebody was saying that you have to have your foot all the way to the floor to go through Eau Rouge. In fact, quite often he said you have to have both feet on the gas to go flat through Eau Rouge, which I thought was a great way of summing it up as a challenge for the drivers. And as you say, it is so important because of the power-sapping Kemmel straight that follows, and we'll look forward to seeing them go through there for the first time in this race. Cars coming through one of the slowest and perversely more difficult parts of the Spa-Francorchamps circuit on the warm-up lap for the penultimate round of the Formula 3000 Championship 2001. They're through the bus stop. This is the slowest spot on the track and one of the most difficult to get the car set up for. On the warm-up lap, the cars coming across the Formula 1 start-finish line down to the La Source hairpin as we get ready to go for what could well be the title-deciding race. 2 warm-up laps because the track is in very different conditions to how they last saw it when they qualified on Saturday, and so they're going round behind the safety car, not at racing speed, but a chance, Gareth Rees, to see what conditions might be like when they do get to see it next time round, which will be at full chat.
Yeah, I always thought this was a fairly pointless exercise, really. I mean, the track, it's different if you've been practicing in dry weather all weekend and suddenly it's a very wet race, because you can get to see where the standing water is, where the puddles are, which is obviously important. If you've been on a wet track and now you're on a dry track, really, I don't really see the benefit in doing it. I think it's a bit of a waste of time, really, but it just gives the drivers an extra lap to get their tyres up to temperature and brakes up to temperature and just get settled in. But really, apart from that, there's no great benefit, I don't think.
Championship could well be decided here. there are two drivers in the hunt for the 2001 title. Justin Wilson, who has led all but every race as the points leader this year. He started off having a big battle with teammate Thomas Enge. Mark Webber got himself into the fray early in the season, and it's been between those three almost from the word go. The pre-season favourites have not let us down. Webber now with a 20-point deficit to Justin Wilson. 20 points left on offer as a maximum in this championship. For Webber to win the title, he must win here and win the final race at Monza without Justin Wilson scoring a single point, because if Wilson does score, he will stay 1 point ahead on total. If Wilson doesn't score at all, if he goes out of the next two or finishes outside the top 6 and Webber wins them both, then Webber will win because he will have won the greater number of races during the season. But the mathematics are such that Webber knows he has no option but to give it everything right from the start, and the Aussie does particularly excel with his back against the wall. They start 3rd and 5th on the grid. The Briton first, there he is in the red machine, and the Aussie just 2 cars behind him as they come through this long sweeping downhill section. This is the new part of the Spa track, which was opened in the early 80s, replacing the 8-odd mile of road course which used to be the home of the Belgian Grand Prix. They'll be doing a rolling start as they come to the line behind the safety car. So this is going to be unusual in Formula 3000 terms. Normally, of course, they do a full grid standing start. And what will be important here is to see who is going to get the jump on the cars in front of them. Lights out on the safety car, ready to go racing for 22 laps of Spa-Francorchamps. Riccardo Sbarifico and Antônio Pizzonia will lead the field round. Justin Wilson and Riccardo Maurizio on row 2. Mark Webber, Patrick Friesacher on row 3 of the grid. And behind them, Darren Manning, Mark Goossens, Thomas Enge, Bas Leinders completing the top 10. Couple of Belgians in there, all 3 championship contenders and the 2 title hopefuls. But as they start, they get the green flag at the Formula 1 start-finish line. Through Eau Rouge they go, 21 laps after this one. So the warm-up lap, it doesn't seem has been counted. We'll have to doubly make sure when the timing screen catches up. But immediately the Petrobras Junior cars jump away. All right, they have counted the first lap then as a racing lap.
Webber.
Off has gone Mark Webber. That is Webber heavily off into the barriers. A very big shunt indeed. Eau Rouge for the very first time. And the championship is over surely. Webber out of the car and unharmed. But look, it's still in gear and the engine is still running. Well, Webber has definitely bashed his ankles. In fact, it looks like he's torn his race suit there as well, down by his right ankle, Gareth. Nasty crash.
It's a nasty accident. I suspect maybe just got slightly offline where it's damp, and the car, as he came to shot, it was backwards already. That's a big impact.
Oh, Mark. Well, what a shame to see the title ended thus. And the yellow flags, the safety car will come back out, of course, but concern now is for the health of the driver. Well, there you go. Got it crossed up and it tank slapped him out of Eau Rouge. Of course, the bit of Eau Rouge you see coming down the hill, the right-hander is the first difficult part through the compression, but equally hard to make the left-hand second element of it up the Kemmel straight, through the curve they call Kemmel. And Webber, well, he doesn't look to be in too much pain, so hopefully no breakages. But the Aussie out of the race. I'm glad to see him able to jump out of the car so quickly. Of course, Formula One's safety crew immediately on hand with their travelling doctors. And there is Sid Watkins there in his helmet on the right-hand side. And he will be quite happy to chat to the driver and get the driver's reading on how badly hurt he is. And there you go, the most basic form of stretcher to take him over to the safety car. But you couldn't possibly want to be in better hands than with Professor Sid Watkins. Incidentally, if any of you are looking for a good book for a birthday or a Christmas present, possibly for a friend or relative who is into motor racing, can I highly recommend Sid Watkins' autobiography, a great read. Can't remember the title of it, rather helpfully, but go on,
Life in the Fast Lane, I think it's called.
Life in the Fast Lane. So there you go, a very good read, a man who has been there, seen it and done it and met them all. So back behind the safety car then, as we started the race briefly. Mark Webber out of the title hunt from 5th on the grid, spearing off there from 4th place. So he had got past Riccardo Maurizio at the start, I think. But Maurizio survives, Webber doesn't. Darren Manning now up to 5th spot. And Patrick Friesacher, the Austrian driver, up into 6th place. So the two Red Bull Junior cars, the two Petrobras Junior cars, a Nordic car, and the Arden Team Russia machine in the top 6. And that is probably the last we'll see of that chassis as it stands. They may well have split the tub there. It looks like a fairly hefty impact. Look again at Eau Rouge. In fact, there is Riccardo Maurizio in 4th place as Mark Webber comes through in 5th. Gareth, possibly just a wheel on the curb on the exit of the first element. I mean, that's where the water is likely to be collected in those crenellations in the curb, and just a fraction of water under the tyres there, I think, was all it takes.
It's difficult to see, obviously, only seeing that shot. It'd be nice to see it earlier in the corner, but it could be either that, like you said, he ran just very slightly wide and just got onto the curb, and the curb always stays wet for much longer than the tarmac. The other problem is, this is the first time of the weekend they've run on full tanks in the dry. And the difficulty you have is you pretty much have to make a little bit of a guesstimate on your ride height setting. Now, if you get that slightly wrong, and you get the car ride height too low, what happens is in Eau Rouge, when you hit the compression, the car's ride height goes even smaller. And if you're already running close to the ground, it actually bottoms out. And just for a split second, you're actually in a toboggan. Effectively, your wheels are not really doing an awful lot of steering or driving the car. And that the car can get out of shape, and like we saw there, Mark came into shot backwards. That could well have happened as well. So either he's run wide or he's bottomed out.
Well, we saw plenty of that in the Formula 1 qualifying, didn't we? Cars running very low indeed. Showers of splinters coming off the planks on the Formula 1 car. Now, they don't have planks in these cars, but as you say, still you try and run the ride height as low as possible for maximum aerodynamic effect. So, indeed, could well be that has been the case as well. So back behind the safety car, but as we've seen, the car has been craned away, and as soon as the medical vehicle, which is running just in front of the field at the moment, gets back to the paddock, then I'm sure we will see the safety car pulled off, and hopefully we will get racing again. Now, put yourself in Justin Wilson's cockpit for a moment. That must be a mighty weight off his mind. The only thing he's got to worry about now is the lottery of what might happen if the rain returns.
Yeah, I think he'd rather be in the pit celebrating now. It's all over, so it's a difficult frame of mind to be in, you know. It's just you want to be with a team and enjoy what you've done.
Well, I have to say, knowing Justin, I can't imagine that he will peel off into the pit lane and jump up and down, although it is entirely possible because he can't be beaten in the title now. Field coming through the bus stop chicane once more. No, it's not a real bus stop. It just looks like one. It goes about the speed of your municipal omnibus as well, and no matter what car you're in. Formula 3000 cars, what are they saying speeds through there are? 50 miles an hour. Formula 1 cars, I think they get as high as 55 as they're turning in. There's just no way to get any more grip out of the narrow tyres that the Formula 1 cars run on, no matter how high-tech they are everywhere else. But that is very much sort of the opposite of everywhere else at Spa. We've got the slow Lassource hairpin as well, another 60-mile-an-hour corner, but the rest of the corners largely are fast to extraordinarily fast, aren't they? There are some really monster speed corners around here.
Yeah, I mean, for me, the bus stop and the hairpin really sort of spoil the flow of the circuit. As a driver, I mean, people always said Spa is the best circuit in the world, and it is a very good circuit with wonderful corners, but it is compromised by the bus stop and the hairpin. I always thought the old, what is now the A1 ring in Austria, the old Österreich ring, was a better circuit because it just flowed so well. Even the one chicane there was a fast chicane, it was third gear, and the thing just flowed so wonderfully. And Spa, although it does flow, it is disrupted by the bus stop, and it's there for safety's sake, really, to slow the cars down. You can understand why, but in an ideal world, they wouldn't be there, and the thing would flow wonderfully. All third and fourth and fifth gears, that would that would be perfection.
Yeah, somewhere, somehow they need to route from the bus stop round via La Source down the hill in a long, sweeping, slightly banked, ballsy right-hander, and then you could go and talk to Eddie Irvine about Spa being the world's greatest track. He's still, of course, a major exponent of Suzuka. Don't talk to me about Spa, he says, well, Suzuka's still a racetrack, so you can't argue with him.
Yeah, Suzuka is nice. I mean, very, very hard circuit, extremely technical.
Of course, Eddie's not old enough to have raced at the old Österreich ring.
Oh, is that right? He certainly is.
I think he started too late. So was never in the right series at the right time.
Yeah.
Well, but you see, that's one of the benefits of doing things as you started in, going into the Euro Series and the Formula Opel Euro Series days, is you did get to race on some great tracks like this instead of, you know, being based in the home tracks where you'd grown up over the years. But yeah, I think there's a great many Formula One watchers that would quite happily have the old ring back as well.
Wonderful. Absolutely wonderful.
Definitely. High speeds and almost always seem to be baking hot and full of plenty of action. Of course, the wildlife tended to be a problem, but that's Austrians for you. So, still behind the safety car then, and now 4 laps into the race. And I'm just trying to have a little quiet comparison. I don't actually think there has been a change from grid order anywhere down the field. But then with a rolling start, you wouldn't necessarily expect that, because it does tend to be a great way of stretching the field out just when you're trying to get them all together. Oh, hello. We seem to have lost our pole man. Well, there is our pole position man coming flying back through the pack. Now, what on earth has happened to him? That is absolutely illegal. You cannot pass anybody under a yellow flag behind the safety car. He must have dropped off the road while we weren't watching him. Was that? No, it wasn't. That was Pizzonia. Unbelievable. We get ready to go green again. Riccardo Spa-Francorchamps leads them out of the bus stop, coming towards the line. Justin Wilson is right up his gearbox. He's looking for the lead. Wilson wants to win the championship and win the race at the same time. But what on earth happened to Antônio Pizzonia? He must have dropped the car off the road. Gareth, maybe you and I were wittering too much. I didn't spot it. But anyway, where is the Petrobras car? There he is, going around the hairpin. What a bizarre thing to have done behind the safety car. He surely didn't pull into the pits. It is Spa-Francorchamps that leads. Pizzonia way down the order. Wilson second, Riccardo Maurizio and Darren Manning third and fourth. So Manning has got past Patrick Friesacher, and look at this. In the tow behind Darren Manning, was that? Yes, that was Friesacher. Doesn't get him up the Kemmel Straights. There is Riccardo Maurizio in third place. So Darren Manning managed to get the jump on the Red Bull Junior driver, and that must have been up to La Source, or possibly out of La Source, because judging by the speed with which Spa-Francorchamps came back at him up the hill, it certainly wasn't through Eau Rouge.
Yeah, it's a shame we started under the safety car again, because it sort of it does stop that sort of rush up the hill. Normally it's much closer than that, but they were pretty strung out by the time they got onto that long straight, so there wasn't much slipstreaming going on.
Looks like Paul Jackson and the Petrobras team have done a stunning job with their cars this weekend, because Justin was right behind. Oh, look, here we go. I'll tell a lie. It was all the way up the straight. Look at that. Oh, that's a great move.
That's a good move.
2 wheels on the white line, luckily on the perhaps slightly drier painted side than on the other, and luckily going in fairly much a straight line. But still, that was being eased into a gap that was about as small as you'd want to be eased into. Maurizio didn't give him much racing room, but Darren took it with both hands. Good move by him. I was going to say that Wilson was right behind Spa-Francorchamps coming out of the bus stop, but look at him, he's out of touch almost here. Spa-Francorchamps must be a second away up the road, and we're only halfway around our lap. Well, that shows how wet the curbs are, doesn't it?
That was all we know.
He's lost his nose. He's taken his nose off either on the curb or getting by. Perhaps damaged the nose of the car, getting by Riccardo Maurizio, but that is effectively the end of Darren Manning's race, because, Gareth, I don't believe that you can run a race around here without a nose wing.
No, absolutely not. That's a shame, because A, that was a fantastic overtaking manoeuvre, and B, that was a great hold he got then through that corner where he was sideways. To hold on to it there in 5th gear, I mean, that takes some doing, believe me.
Yes, I don't doubt it in the least. One year I hope to have enough signatures on my licence to come here for the annual mini race and actually try Spa-Francorchamps as a driver, but that year has yet to come. So, 17 laps to go. Spa-Francorchamps from Wilson, Maurizio in third, Mark Goossens in fourth as Darren Manning comes down the pits, not for a change of tyres, but for a new nose wing, and he will rejoin Stone last, and that is a big disappointment for the British driver.
Yeah, I mean, he was obviously in a podium position there and going well, so that is a great shame for him, because he needs a good, strong finish to the season, really.
Yes, he does. So the Arden team, based in Banbury, right beside the ProDrive Works, are busy changing the nose, but it's a long manual job, and it doesn't look like they were quite ready for it. Here's the replay.
No.
Those little flexible cones are flexible,
Not that
but
flexible.
not that flexible, it seems. They've stiffened them up a little bit. They used to have really floppy ones, didn't they, that just sprung back up, but those ones look a lot more rounded and substantial. Race leader is Riccardo Spa-Francorchamps, and he is pulling away. He was 1.4 seconds ahead of Justin Wilson at the end of the first racing lap. Now that's a pretty impressive rate of clearance that he's getting away from Wilson, and if he carries on that road, then he's going to be 30 seconds away by the end of the race. Now obviously Wilson doesn't need to push. On the other hand, he is letting him go at a fairly ferocious rate, even though he's dropping the rest of the field. Yeah,
it's certainly very impressive, although I think Justin knows there's a long ways ahead yet, and Spa-Francorchamps he's not had a race win, is he, Spa-Francorchamps? So it's his first year in 3000 as well, so Justin's quite happy to sort of let him go to a certain point, but if he starts to get away a big amount, I think Justin will work hard to get his head down and reel him back in.
Well, the other thing, of course, is it is Riccardo's first year at Spa, Justin's third race here. He's had the monster shunt already, thanks very much, at Eau Rouge a couple of years ago with Alex Young, but maybe he'll just let Riccardo play himself out on a bit of rope and see if he comes into contact with the scenery or scares himself and has to back off it a little bit. Whoops. Now, this is a big battle behind the two European aviation cars and the Dams machine. That's a good little battle going on there. Wow.
Pizzonia trying to get by as well.
Yeah, three abreast. I was going to say that Tomáš Enge is also slicing up through the field. Started ninth, currently lying in fifth place. All right, we've lost Webber and Manning, so he's picked up two from there, but he's also picked up 2 places in the 2 racing laps they've had so far. And as you can see, the leaders starting to stretch away, and it looks as though Patrick Friesacher with the red and white car there of Bas Leinders. That's the unusual colours for Leinders, but not for a Belgian driver. That's the Bastos Tobacco Company that we've so often seen sponsoring Belgian rally and touring cars, for instance. And they seem to have weighed in behind Bas Leinders to get him back into 3000. There he is with the black, gold and red of Belgium on his helmet. And there is Friesacher, the Austrian driver, with the Red Bull colours on his machine. So Leinders right there, Sébastien Bourdais behind, then Fabrizio Golin. And that battle we are watching behind, Derek Hill, Andrea Piccini and David Saelens, the 3 black cars. There they are, the 2 European cars behind Derek Hill in his Dams machine. Teammate of Sébastien Bourdais, who's on the back of this little group. And the Dams team's starting to find a little bit of form now. They've languished so long since the successful years of the mid to late 80s, and Derek Hill really not had much of a season. He's firmly of the opinion, I think, that Dams tend to take on a little bit more than they can really deal with in terms of other commitments, touring cars or sports car racing or whatever else, and as a result the sort of one constant, their Formula 3000 team seems to suffer a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's probably partly true, although Bourdais is doing a really solid job this year. I think you can't blame it all on the team, but I think he can look at himself a little bit perhaps as well.
Well, that's entirely possible. Sébastien Bourdais, of course, coming back into the championship. This is his 3rd season as well. In fact, we're going to lose quite a number of drivers at the end of the race at Monza. We've got a number of 3-year drivers and quite a few 2-year drivers as well, who may well be looking to try and move on. Where they're going to, though, is anybody's guess. Doesn't seem to be an awful lot of movement in Formula 1 at the moment for them to edge into. Maurizio and Enge here. Enge's got a test next week at Magny-Cours. He'll be testing for a couple of days. And as you see, Bas Leinders trying to put the moves on Friesacher. Bourdais right with him as well, ready to try and take advantage of that. There's Bourdais in the black car, the Dams machine. And Bas Leinders, well, he's raced here at least three times in Formula 3000. Oh, and there's David Saelens. Local knowledge counting for very little there at the top of the Kemmel Straight. That's into Les Combes. And he's gone off there, and with whom? With his teammate. No. Oh dear, and he's running over there. And I guarantee that is, yes, an offer to take him round to the back of the grandstands. And that's why, because he was punted off by his teammate under braking. Oh dear, oh dear. Oops. And Andrea Piccini, another third-year Formula 3000 driver. The Italian really should have known better. And probably a good deal that a good idea for the director to cut away there to the replay rather than the fisticuffs, which I'm sure were just about to take place. Yeah, Saelens looking as happy as you might expect there, and probably be a very sheepish Piccini who goes back to the pits, if indeed he doesn't just head straight for the hire car. There is the look of a man who knows exactly what a faux pas he's just committed. Angry, but I think with himself, Gareth.
I'd like to see it from another angle. It's always hard to sort of decide completely what happened from one angle. I mean, they were obviously running pretty close to each other, and I couldn't clearly see who would actually hit who there. And when you're on the edge of braking like that, there is some movement on the car anyway, and both clearly were on the edge of braking additional, so difficult to sort of apportion blame at the moment, but given the reactions of the drivers, I'd say Saelens looks angry and Piccini looks sheepish, like you said, so, yeah, that speaks volumes, I think.
Well, yes, possibly. We will have to allow the jury to be out on that one. 8 laps in, Spa-Francorchamps, the race leader with the fastest lap, 2:09.095. But Wilson just a few tenths slower, so Justin is limiting the damage at the moment. Riccardo Maurizio third from Enge, and then this battle with Goossens and Bas Leinders. I beg your pardon, with Maurizio and Bas Leinders behind Thomas Enge. And there is... getting it on, no, not Maurizio, it's Friesacher. Maurizio's in third place, yeah. Friesacher in sixth place ahead of Bas Leinders and Sébastien Bourdais, so we'll get them sorted out in my head in a moment. We'll take a short commercial break while this battle continues. We'll be back at Spa in just a moment. As we continue, we're just 8 laps in to this 22-lap race. Stay with us for more action here on Eurosport. Welcome back to Spa-Francorchamps. That is all we have, I'm afraid, of the crash between Piccini and Saelens, the two teammates in the European aviation cars taking themselves out. And as we've been watching that, Darren Manning, who went into the pits early on for a new nose wing, has also gone off. Looks as though it really wasn't his day. The Englishman lost his nose wing first time at full speed through the bus stop chicane, and he's gone off. Where's he gone off? Let's have a look at the replay. Kind of looked as though it might have been at Pif-Paf, but I'm not sure. Too close in to tell, I'm afraid. Downhill right-hander, Rivage. It's Rivage. It is Rivage, yeah. So just getting in too fast, trying to correct it. The big slide got away. Yes, it is Rivage. And that's quick enough. 95 miles an hour and accelerating hard down the hill. One of the things about Spa, Gareth, is that a lot of the sort of transitions from slower corners into faster ones are seemingly downhill. You really do pile on the pace, particularly out of places like the La Source hairpin.
You do, yeah. I mean, acceleration is obviously much quicker here than elsewhere because of the downhill advantage. But that's what makes it such a great circuit, is you have the difference, you know, the undulations, everything else. It's somewhere other circuits that are sort of on a fairly flat old airfield type thing, like perhaps Snetterton or something, and it's not as interesting because you haven't got those undulations. Here it's up and down, uphill, down, dale. It makes it a really fantastic circuit to drive, really satisfying.
So what a bizarre and interesting race we've had so far. Riccardo Spa-Francorchamps leads. The man who shared the front row of the grid with him, Antônio Pizzonia, unseen by us, dropped his car off the road or did something bizarre in the warm-up lap and is currently lying in 12th place, having passed, well, at least half a dozen cars probably that we saw on the warm-up lap itself behind the safety car. So we lost the second man on the grid. Justin Wilson from third lies in second place. Riccardo Mauricio's third place now. Mark Webber crashed out first time through Eau Rouge. We've lost Darren Manning as well. We've also lost now the two European aviation cars. So we're starting to see a fairly major rate of attrition. Mark Goossens now up to 5th place, who started 8th on the grid. Thomas Enge started 9th, he's in 4th place. So there's some bizarre changes. I mean, almost as if it's actually a wet race.
Yes.
But without the rain.
You sometimes get these races, you know, where people just seem so keen to throw themselves at the wall, and you can qualify all, really badly in sort of 15th, 16th, or even worse, and suddenly find yourself in the top 6 through no overtaking, purely simply because people are just going off left, right and centre. They come around sort of once every season, these races, so this is obviously the one for this season.
Make the most of it. Yes.
Yeah.
Cross them all off until we've got about 6 running at the end. Although currently we have, we're still showing 20 cars running, so that's not too bad for the 24 car. Yes, early days. Ever the optimist. Waiting for more. And there I am, always expounding my theory that people watch motor racing to see cars nearly crashing, but not quite. So the race leader, Riccardo Spa-Francorchamps, just 2.8 seconds ahead now, as we see Enrico Toccacello finding that his talent ran out just fractionally earlier than he had hoped for at the top of the hill. That's Les Combes. Very difficult little section there. You come in at such pace from the top of the hill, crest the rise off the Camel Straight, and suddenly it's heavy braking, and cars do tend to get easily unsettled there, don't they?
It is. It's a little bit bumpy up there as well, and also there is a sort of wide variety of a choice of line, and a lot of different drivers do different lines, and because of that, often it's easy to sort of run a bit too wide, and like it is today, it's a bit greasy off line.
So Justin Wilson, second place at the moment. 209.9 his last lap, 209.2 Riccardo Spa-Francorchamps, the race leader. So Wilson still not going anything like as quickly as Spa-Francorchamps, and the Brazilian, who was on pole position, is starting to run away with it. He's got another half second quicker on this lap. Mario Haberfeld in 10th place, while Haberfeld in 14th on the grid, so doesn't seem to have actually passed anybody yet. But
no. I think Justin Wilson's position, the fact that he's dropping away lap by lap from Spa-Francorchamps, maybe indicates a difference in setup. It may be that Spa-Francorchamps committed to a full dry setup, gamble on the fact it would stay definitely dry the whole race, and maybe Justin thought, well, we've had showers on and off all weekend so far, probably be the same in the race, let's go on a sort of intermediate setting. And the fact it is staying dry is playing into Spa-Francorchamps's hands, that's why he's pulling away. Maybe something like that, or maybe pure and simple, Spa-Francorchamps's quicker.
Well, Justin obviously, Justin with nothing to prove, so you're right, they may well have decided that Nordic team to have a little gamble and run him partly soft, and that may be the difference between them. Thomas Enge in the number 9 machine, started 9th on the grid. The Czech, of course, in the title race until perversely he got closest to home at Hungary, when his hopes eventually faded for the final time. But still, with Justin Wilson, has put Nordic very much in the frame as the team to beat. No longer, I think, Nordic Racing just a front runner. They are absolutely the benchmark this year, and you know that if you've out-qualified them, then you've done a pretty good job all round. And certainly you could say that the Petrobras junior team, with their cars dominating the front row of the grid, have done a very good job here. Norberto Fontana, the Argentine, in the pits, out of the car, bailed out. We haven't seen why, but clearly there was something missing, like one of the gears or something of that order, I would think, that's brought him into the pits rather than stopped him out on the track. So just to recap on the race order then, Spa-Francorchamps by 3 from Wilson, Maurizio 3rd, Enge in 4th place, and Gareth, the podium position not beyond his reach, I think. They're now completing lap 12, so over half distance. If it rains now and they red flag it, then it will be declared a full, it'll be declared a finish, but a half points finish. But still, with 10 laps to go, I would think that Thomas Enge has got to be thinking about a podium, even if he's not actively chasing Riccardo Maurizio. You're looking here at Mark Goossens with Patrick Friesacher right behind him, and Bas Leinders next up. So the Belgians 5th and 7th, and they too must both be thinking about points. Leinders has had several looks at Patrick Friesacher, and to his credit, the Austrian has managed to see them all coming and defended nice and neatly.
Yeah, I've been impressed with him this year, actually. He's generally been towards the front, generally races well. I don't recall him making mistakes particularly this year, and he looks a good driver. I'm not sure how old he is, actually. Do you know how old he is?
I can probably tell you by working backwards. 1980, he's 22, so,
okay, so
or coming up to 22.
Yeah, I think he's certainly 1 to watch.
21, yes.
He's a good driver.
Not 2002 yet, Martin. One of the 4 drivers in the hunt for the German Formula 3 title at the end of last season, so certainly no slouch when it comes to pedalling a sharply defined single-seater, as well as these slightly more relaxed handling, shall we say, Formula 3000 cars.
That's terminology.
And one of the F3 drivers who has taken a little while to get to grips with the way of setting these cars up. I'm sure, like most of the F3 drivers who come into this chassis, they have spent many frustrating hours trying to tighten it up and sharpen it up to the way that they know a race car should handle before finally realising that, in fact, it's never going to do that. Be interesting to see how the teams react to the new chassis that are coming into the championship from Leinders. That's next year, isn't it?
Yes,
They're bringing a new chassis in.
That's right.
It'll be interesting to see how much sharper defined or how similar to this year's it is, in fact, and just how much or how little they've learned and refined over the last 3 years or 4 years will be applicable when it gets to next year. It might well level the playing field out, and then I think we are going to see in the first few races of 2002 who has got the engineering strength in depth. So once more, I imagine that teams like Nordic and the Petrobras and Supernova teams will probably be pretty much to the fore, as indeed they are now.
Yeah, I would have thought so. I mean, there's not normally a massive change between the chassis when they bring new chassis, and purely simply because the cars are built down to a price. Loader are given a budget whereby they can't exceed a price per car, and that kind of limits the amount of alterations and engineering input they'd like to put on the car. But I'm sure they'd like to make the car better, but because it's built to a price, they are limited, unfortunately.
Bernie Ecclestone had a meeting with the Formula 3000 team managers this weekend at Spa, and came up with no new formulations or no new plans, but they will be meeting again at Monza, and Bernie's definitely quite keen to further align the Formula 3000 teams with Formula 1 outfits in the way that we've got the Red Bull Junior team with its sort of Prost relationship, its Sauber relationship, the Prost Junior team, and the Minardi Junior team as well. I think we'll see a few more of those. But no radical plans, certainly, for Formula 3000. Well, we'll see more of the race in just a moment, so stay with us. Eurosport live at Spa-Francorchamps. This is the 11th and penultimate race in the Formula 3000 Championship, being led by Riccardo Sbarifico. And further back down the hill there, we could see his teammate Antônio Pizzonia working his way up the order from 12th a couple of laps ago. He's now up to 10th, but he shouldn't have been that far down. He was second in qualifying. And Gareth Rees spinning his car on the warm-up lap. Bizarre way to start a race.
It is, and after all that hard work of getting on the front row and qualifying, he does it all with a stupid mistake. So I should imagine the team are pretty well not very happy with that, I would have thought, and himself, obviously.
I'll be looking forward to seeing the post-race press release on that one. Yeah, well, either just weaving too hard to keep his tyres warm, or possibly just touching a little bit of painted curb somewhere on the warm-up lap. Whatever, Pizzonia undoing, as you say, all the hard work of qualifying, and the much hoped for Petrobras at 1-2 is firmly in the bin, I think. We were just talking during the break about Bas Leinders, the Belgian driver. Has had several years in Formula 3000 now, never seemed to get that breakout year, and sponsored by the Belgian Bastos Tobacco Company here. One of those drivers who's always performed well, but never sort of just quite seemed to be in the right place with the right deal at the right time. And a lot of drivers you see in Formula 3000, and you sort of struggle to imagine where the next break is going to come from. I mean, it's just almost impossible to find a way into Formula 1 nowadays. It's something that does need sorting for this category, to have, you know, another career path progression, because nobody sees 3000 as a career. They see it as a step to Formula 1, but very few, you know, history teaches us that very few of the 24 cars on the grid each year and 30-odd drivers who compete will actually get into Formula 1. Yeah,
that's the problem. I mean, oops, Maslov running a bit wide. That's the problem. I mean, you know, years gone by, it was always that the 3000 champion would guarantee to get into F1, and usually 2 or 3 others would go, you know, guys who'd finished lower in the championship would also go to F1 each season. So it's quite an attractive formula to be in, because you knew that was where the guys went to F1 from. And that hasn't been the case now for probably 6 years, I think.
Yeah.
And if Bernie Ecclestone wants to take a closer interest in the series, I think that's one of the things he needs to look at, is making sure that it is more of an obvious career track from 3000 to F1, because at the moment there just seems to be this insurmountable brick wall between the two. And success in 3000 is absolutely no guarantee of a pathway into F1.
Absolutely right, especially now when you see drivers jumping not from Formula 3 but from Formula Renault successfully into Formula 1. I mean, you look at Kimi Räikkönen, you can't imagine that he'll be out of F1 in a decade. So, you know, there's another seat tied up for generations of 3000 drivers, and that is a perennial problem. And I'm sure that's one of the reasons why Bernie is hoping to align the teams a little more closely with Formula 1, so that drivers aren't always hunting for testing deals, so that if you get a Formula 3000 drive with, say, the Prost Junior team, then a testing contract pretty much goes hand in hand, or at least the chance for a Formula 1 team to have a look at you and try you out, rather than everybody trying to barter themselves on the open market is the way they're doing now. I mean, Mark Webber's got his testing deal with Benetton this season, and he's, you know, when he was driving for the Arrows team, or the Arrows Junior team last year, was hoping to get an Arrows test drive, which never sort of happened. Thomas Enge's looking around as they do for a test drive, and Justin Wilson is rumoured to be you know, knocking on the door of a Formula 1 test, but again, you know, nothing's guaranteed from those. It's just persuading a team manager even to take the chance on putting you in a car for a half an hour around Silverstone. I mean, you know, even that is a tough enough mountain to climb.
Yeah, I mean, in the space of 10 years, we've gone from the 3000 champion being guaranteed virtually to get into F1 to a point where he can't even get himself into a test. Yeah. I mean, that's just so wrong. It really is wrong, and it needs addressing. Because you've got a situation where people like Alex Yoong are getting to F1, and F1's supposed to be the pinnacle. It's not right. It really isn't right when you've got guys like Wilson, Enge, Webber, who are on the sidelines.
Well, I've been saying all season that Justin Wilson seems to be the invisible man in Formula 1, as Ricardo, Baz Leinders goes, I'm going to say Ricardo Maurizio again, but it's not, it's Patrick Friesacher. Baz Leinders goes past Patrick Friesacher and gets the line absolutely right, I would think, there, through Eau Rouge, up the Kemmel Straight, just managed to outdrag Friesacher. So he goes up into 6th position, Friesacher down to 7th, Sébastien Bourdais right behind. We'll take a little bit of stock from that, and again, we were just saying during the break that it has become a little static, this race. The lead pair running away from everybody else. Spa-Francorchamps is 7 seconds ahead of Wilson. Wilson is, in turn, 6 seconds ahead of third place Riccardo Maurizio. And Maurizio is about 6 seconds ahead of Thomas Enge in 4th, so it's really spreading out quite badly. Baz Leinders into a point scoring position, as he has moved past Patrick Friesacher for 6th place. Mark Goossens, fellow Belgian, right in front of him. And in fact, Goossens seemed to be the slowest of this lot, because Friesacher, Leinders and Bourdais were all sitting right behind him. Obviously, you can't go any quicker than the car in front if you can't get by. It's a truism that's particularly annoying in single-seater racing. Even here at Spa, Gareth, with a fair number of high-speed corners and decent straights and overtaking opportunities, it can still prove a little problematic to get by a car that's a fraction slower, but no more than that.
It is very difficult. I mean, it's almost impossible without being very brave, which it sort of marks out the good overtakers, really, as to the guys who make progress. As regards the speed of these 3 or 4 here, I think Goossens was probably about the same as Friesacher. Leinders does seem to be the quickest of the pack, and Goossens, obviously, now Leinders is right behind him. It should be an interesting scrap. Also added with extra spice, obviously, for the top Belgian place in the home race for them. So
absolutely,
should be a good last 5 laps.
Yes, alluding to the Formula 1 press conference where there were the 2 Williams drivers on the first row of the grid, with Montoya on pole and Ralf Schumacher second. When they got to Michael Schumacher, they said, "So Michael, why do you think you weren't on pole today?" He said, "Oh, I was on pole. I was fastest of the Michelin runners." So obviously there's going to be 2 race winners here. One will be Riccardo Spa-Francorchamps, and the second one will be a choice between Goossens and Leinders. And at the moment, you have to say, it looks like it might even be Leinders, because as I agree with you, he is definitely quicker than Goossens. And was just watching them come up the straight, actually, with Justin Wilson now 8.3 seconds behind race leader Riccardo Spa-Francorchamps, and I bet Wilson was looking all the way up the straight of the clouds going, "Come on, damn it, let's have a bit of water or something." So I'm sure he won't be too disappointed to come second here. I'm sure he would much prefer to have won the race. However, the championship has been his target, I'm sure, in the last 2 or 3 races, even if he's been trying hard not to think about it early in the season. And this, of course, will be the race that has decided the championship in his favour. Mark Webber crashing out, if you didn't see it early on, right at the beginning. They did a warm-up lap and then a lap behind the safety car before being released into racing conditions. And through Eau Rouge for the first time, Mark Webber appeared out of the exit corner backwards and went off heavily. Seems to have damaged his right ankle. Not badly enough, I don't think, to have broken anything, but wouldn't be surprised if he's heavily bruised or perhaps torn a ligament or something, which will still be painful enough when he gets to Monza in a few weeks. Other than that, he seemed to be okay. Hopped out of the car pretty sharpish, and Professor Sid Watkins took him away. And that was where the title was decided. Webber needed to win here and at Monza, with Wilson no scoring to be able to win on a number of races, because that would have tied them on points. But Wilson sitting now comfortably and allowing Spa-Francorchamps to continue lapping. 2:09.8, and Wilson 2:11, showing just how much he's backed off with just this 4 laps remaining.
Yeah, the problem with a crash in a single-seater car is obviously, although you could see Mark Webber's car structurally had remained sound, because your feet inside are not actually strapped to anything. When you have a big impact, they just get smacked around against the pedals, against the side of the monocoque, and that's when damage is done. That's when a breakage occurs, or when the suspension part gets pushed through the tub and into the driver's leg or feet. So although the actual structure remains sound, whereas in a road car accident it would deform, it remains sound. The damage is done either by one of those two things, getting banged around inside, or by part of the suspension coming through.
Yeah, having a great conversation over breakfast with Johnny Herbert last weekend at Mid-Ohio, and getting ready for the American Le Mans race, and he was talking about a Formula Ford accident that he'd had, where the suspension, the upper wishbone, the rear end of it had punctured his Formula Ford chassis and actually gone into his thigh, through the muscle just below the bone. And he said he was sitting in the car waiting to be rescued from it, and he couldn't get himself out, and his leg felt a bit numb, and he thought, I've had a really big belt here, and this is going to be really bruised and horrid looking in a few days' time. And it wasn't until the marshals lifted the car, the wheel dropped and the suspension arm moved in his leg, that he passed out instantaneously.
Yes, I can imagine. That would hurt.
Yes, fortunately carbon tubs are a lot stronger than early 80s Formula Ford cars, but still, you know, the damage of an impact can be a lot worse than it looks from the start. And as you say, inside these carbon fibre tubs, you may as well be in a steel safe, because you do get thrown around, and they resist a lot of impact from the human body as well as from external forces, and they do make an awful mess of your legs, and particularly knees. Even driving them, if you're not properly padded, you can do a lot of damage to yourself. However, he's not too badly damaged, we hope, and Riccardo Spa-Francorchamps leading at the moment. Bas Leinders still chasing here at Spa, his home circuit, looking for the honour of being best Belgian as he battles with Mark Goossens. As we see race leader in replay, Riccardo Spa-Francorchamps making the sort of error that Justin Wilson would have liked to have known about some 10 or 15 laps ago. Spa-Francorchamps just locking them up as he runs low on fuel and perhaps a little weary towards the end of the race. Nice big slide from Victor Maslov. Wow, wouldn't it be great to see Formula 1 cars doing that lap after lap? Never happen, obviously, because engineers have discovered the word aerodynamics and aren't prepared to give it up, but there you go. So here is the battle for best Belgian then. The director in Belgium, being a Belgian, unlikely that he wouldn't be featuring this, and it seems to be the only likelihood for a passing manoeuvre in the race as well. Riccardo Maurizio too far ahead of Thomas Enge to make a change on the podium, and Spa-Francorchamps and Wilson too far ahead of their respective pursuers for anything to change there as well. 10 seconds is the gap first to second, 5 now the gap second to third. So I'm sure Maurizio is seeing that on his pit board and getting his head down even more than he had earlier. But I think that's just a case of Justin Wilson easing up. I hope that this race doesn't end with him stopping. His last lap was 2:10.4 compared to 2:10.0 for Spa-Francorchamps and 2:10.5 for Maurizio. So I don't think there's a mechanical problem with Wilson. I think he just probably had a bit of a relaxed last couple of laps. Enge fourth. This battle for fifth, Goossen, Leinders, and then Friesacher still ahead of Bourdais. Bourdais can't catch the Austrian, but he is being reeled in by Antônio Pizzonia. Pizzonia, who started second on the grid, spun the car behind the safety car on the first counted lap of the race, the official second warm-up lap, I guess, and then overtook. Well, he must have overtaken a number of cars because he was 12th, and we saw him overtaking a couple of cars, certainly on camera. And Gareth did mention earlier on during one of the breaks that he thought that we should have seen a black flag for him, or certainly a stop-and-go penalty for Pizzonia. Perhaps the FIA officials don't watch Formula 3000 that closely. But I would have thought that behind a safety car, even in the first lap of the race, making up places you've thrown away by being foolish is probably against the rules. Anyway, there you go. Now, having said there's not going to be much of a change, Enge is now 1 second behind Maurizio. We haven't seen that at all. In fact, I don't think we've actually seen that battle all race. Enge 2:10.5 to Mauricio's 2:11.2 on the last lap, so 7/10 quicker. And that could end in a last lap drama. Enge might yet find himself on the podium. We won't see that, obviously, because it's just in front of this all-Belgian battle for 5th and 6th places. But there you go. We'll try and keep you informed of that if and when it happens. They've completed 20 laps. They are on lap 21 of 22. The first lap behind the safety car counted as a racing lap. Mario Haberfeld, the fastest lap of the race so far, 2:08.9, so there's still plenty of pace to be found because the leaders are lapping in the 2:09s and 2:10s. In fact, Riccardo Maurizio did a 2:11.2 on the last lap, as we said, to allow Thomas Enge to close to just 1 second behind him with 2 laps of Spa to go. Now, I fancy those odds, don't you? 7/10 of a second quicker, yes, and 2 laps to go. Be interesting to see what happens there. And to this battle as well, Goossens and Leinders. And as you can see, Friesacher, then Bourdais and Pizzonia now to 9th. And I fancy Pizzonia to get past Bourdais as well. He'll be right behind him out of the bus stop, and he'll be monstering him all the way down the hill out of La Source. So try and watch the background of the all-Belgian battle, because Pizzonia, the green and yellow car, is the man you want to watch. And you can see Bourdais checking the mirrors as they come to the hairpin. Sees that no Brazilian attack is coming down the inside at La Source. And as they go on to their last lap, the leaders already probably starting the climb up the Kemmel Straight. Through Eau Rouge they go. And in fact, there is the battle for 3rd place, Maurizio and Enge at the top at Les Combes. Right and then left, through into the long right-hander at Malmedy. You start to drop down the hill now over the crest, heading down into the long 180-degree rivage. Tight right-hander that starts to open up on the exit, and again plunging downhill through the left-hander. And accelerating hard all the way as they go. Good stretch here for Enge to really try and get the measure of Riccardo Maurizio, as our race leader is already through Fagnes and heading up towards the right-hander at the lowest part of the circuit before they come towards Stavelot, heading off the new part of the track and back onto the public roads. This is the end of the old Spa road course, and it's where the 4.3-mile new circuit joins what used to be the 8-mile plus road course. Haberfeld going quicker again, way down the order though, as into the bus stop for the final time comes race leader Riccardo Spa-Francorchamps, on target for his maiden Formula 3000 victory. And here comes the rain, just too late to affect the race. Unbelievable. A shower at the finish line greets Riccardo Spa-Francorchamps, so he'll be drenched before the champagne arrives. It's dry at the exit to the bus stop, and I guarantee somebody is going to go off before this race finishes. Wilson is second, and this is where the crash is going to happen, no doubt about it. No, rain has reached the bus stop now, so that is Friesacher hitting the back of which of the 2 Belgians, I'm not sure. This is going to be a dramatic sort out towards the line. Well, Enge gets 4th place then, and Bas Leinders survived, so it was Friesacher. Was Friesacher hitting the back of Bas Leinders?
Yeah, he spun him round completely.
So Goossens got away scot-free. Leinders got clipped by Friesacher. Behind him off went Sébastien Bourdais. Pizzonia went through the chicane the right way round, and that'll be one for the stewards to sort out later.
Bourdais got 6th.
So Bourdais in 6th position then. Although I don't think he can do, because he straight-lined the chicane.
He did, but he took avoiding action, didn't he?
Yeah,
He had no option, really. So
well, we'll have to wait and see how the stewards see that. However, no doubting the winner, second or third place. And look at that, Riccardo Spa-Francorchamps thrilled to bits. I'm sure Justin Wilson will take a moment or two getting out of the cockpit, because he has achieved his aim, the aim he had 4 years ago when he won the Formula Parma Audi Championship in its inaugural year and claimed his prize, a win in Formula 3000. And there he is, the lanky Englishman steps out of the cockpit, and look at that, Goossen's got it all wrong. The rain had arrived at the bus stop as this battle got there. Bourdais skating through the escape road. Well, it was avoiding action, but he made up 3 places there, so we'll wait to see. And is that Rodrigo? I think that's his brother there, who's not driving here this weekend. But Rodrigo, yeah, thumbs up for his twin brother, Riccardo. Riccardo Spa-Francorchamps wins his maiden Formula 3000 race. And there is Riccardo Maurizio behind as the rain slices down across the Formula 3000 pit lane and paddock. Wow, dramatic end to an eventful race. Sort of faded a little bit in the middle distance, but highlights at the beginning and at the end. And for the Belgian drivers, a pretty tough race all the way through. But for Spa-Francorchamps, a faultless performance. Battled his teammate well for pole position, which he claimed in the end by going ever faster. And from pole position, he never looked like coming under threat. Justin Wilson close in the bus stop at the first restart, but Spa-Francorchamps had the measure of that and just simply drove away from him. Good driving, good setup, a great performance all round.
Yeah, I think it was a good, well, like you said, it was a very good performance. He didn't look to put a foot wrong apart from the lock-up we saw. And to pull away from the championship winner like that, consistently every lap, was a good performance.
Well, points importantly for Tomáš Enge in second place, in fourth place here. Third in the championship at the moment, but a no score. There's Jonathan Palmer, who will be on hand to congratulate Justin Wilson, the man who has really nurtured Justin's career, courtesy of that championship drive that brought Justin into 3000 3 years ago. And I know that Palmer, an ex-Formula 3000 driver, will be thrilled to bits for his man, and now even more certain that he must get him test drives in Formula 1. Surely Justin Wilson can't remain the invisible man of Formula 3000 for much longer. He is the champion after all. The cameras overlooking the Formula 1 paddock closest to us, and downhill there the Formula 3000 paddock. And the 3000 and Formula 1 team members there in the pit lane, just in looking at the heavens and at the, I'm sure, the boxes there, the sky boxes of the spectators. And a chance for the winner to relish the Brazilian national anthem. Getting all 4 verses of the Brazilian national anthem. And, well, among the congratulators for Justin Wilson, the Formula 3000 champion 2001, of course, will be Chris and Derek Mower, his team bosses at Nordic Racing. A fine performance from them, a fine performance as well for Riccardo Spa-Francorchamps, our race winner, and countryman Riccardo Maurizio in third place. But final words, Gareth, a good finish for the race for Justin Wilson, definitely.
Yeah, I'm really pleased for him. He's been the class of the field all year in terms of speed and also consistency. Very impressive, and it's just justice that he wins the title.
I think so. He's been quick, consistent, and unflappable. He's also, I have to say, one of the most aggressive overtakers and racers in the field, and it's always good to see somebody who won't cruise for the points coming out on top. Not to say that Mark Webber would have cruised for points, that's not in his nature either. Two great racers along with Thomas Enge have been the highlights of this championship. Well, with Ricardo and Rodrigo Spa-Francorchamps perhaps to look forward to in the championship next year, and I think it'll be a very interesting series, and the championship next year may well come down to one of those two Brazilians if they're in it. Final race of the year from Monza, and you can see that, of course, live as ever on Eurosport. And we will hopefully catch up during the week with Justin Wilson, talk to the champion, and check out Automag on Wednesday. I'm sure we'll have something from the Formula 3000 front runners then. Wilson as well, perhaps, as Mark Webber. Until then, from Spa-Francorchamps, from Gareth Rees, and from me, Martin Haven, it's goodbye for now. Bye-bye.